Recording in progress.
Great.
上界の新元出没なし。大悲の眼力古来を次元す。青い恋根が湧くは信じして召喚を垂れたまえ。アメリカ合衆国カリフォルニア州モンテベロ市。玉王山総禅寺人をびく。 道山第二世、時報周一大王将、自弱の真にを、謹んで工芸当職、傘陸を備え、もって供養のぶ。よって、現前の聖書を集め、マカハンニャラミタ信用、三道海洋プジュス、集むるところの主君は、神ジオンに報いんものなり、打ち手をもん見れば方言遠妙にして、在して実月の眼を輝かし、前期活発にして即将鉄石の芯を振る。帝釈の鼻空を熱転して盆節を建立し、両祖の不増を決意して群青理祭す。ここにおいてか新人敬語し、男神起訴す。月に感じて恩をなす霊祭の角に抱負たり、歌槌に驚いて顔を生ずる構造の牙に聞いたり、すなわち知る。すでに文様の反抗を得て、王林いよいよ展示。さらに三風の陰性ありて、剣ますます開く。仰ぎ恋願わくは、無手あっちゅうの財布。宇宙直下に用のせられんこと通信でしょう。令和4年9月12日、玉王山総禅寺小บิ๊通信でしょう。はい、工場工業。工業。領事工業。領事。領事。Please place your hands on your show. Right, right. 何でしょう。What's the news? 赤、般若、波羅蜜多、信用、安住最高殺業人、般若波羅蜜多、地上天後、雲海空洞一切、空薬者利子、色有意空空、空意識色即是、空空即是、色住創業、色薬無尿税、シャリシゼショウソウショウメツウクジョウゾウゲンゼコクチュ無式無住創業式無限微税真に色証拠未足を無限界内し無意識界無無明薬無明人内し無老死薬無老死人無空襲滅量無知薬無直意無所得菩提サッチャエハンニャーラミタオシンムケゲムケゲコムクオンリサイケントムソクギョネハンサンセショウツエハンニャーラミタコトクワドクジャラサンミャクサンボダイコチハンニャーラミタ税大人衆税大名衆税無常衆税無東道衆農場一切空真実公説アンニャーラミタ収束説収圧ギャテギャテアラギャテ発想ギャテオジソワカアンニャシンユ上来マカハンニャラミタ信用不受する功徳は第四教宗本師釈迦牟尼仏高僧上陽大師大僧上祭大師に供養し立て祭り無常仏家菩提を将軍す不して願わくは同じく主治をまどかにせんことさらに祈るところは、玉王山総禅寺、男神と各系家門繁栄子孫長久在少女、身体健を病気英雄、諸縁吉祥ならんことを、おじお三四一四子孫無さもこさも 大戦の神、東西密に相うす人婚、理論あり道に南北のそなし霊言妙にこけたりしあん、宇宙筋を集するももとこれ迷いかの、また悟りにあらずも一切の教へごとしてさらに相渡る力ざれ、くらいによって収式元出動ことにし小元楽をことにすらん、常習のことに課題名は清楽の苦を明かつ次第の小の図から複すこのその青うるがごとしはねし、風は同様、水は潤い、地は剣をまなこあい、耳は温情、穴はか、下は乾燥、しかもいちいちの匂い、根によっては分布本末すべからくしゅきすべし尊卑その後も中命中にあたあんありあんそうもておことなかれあん中にあためありめそうもって見ることなかれめいやんおのおの相対してするに前後の歩みのごとし万物おのずからこうありまさによと諸と言うべし子孫すれば考えが知りをずれば先方さそうことを受けてはすべからく衆にえすべし自ら聞くを律することなかれ即目道へせずんば足を運ぶもいずくんぞ道を知らん歩みを進むれば権能にあらず迷う千賀の声だ慎んで三元の糸に申す婚姻虚しく渡ることなかれ上界の神元出没なし大の眼力古来王次元数仰ぎ恋願わくは信じ打ちて召喚を垂れたまえ三門今月今日して当時第二世上州一大王将弱の真にを謹んで工芸当職当笠珍衆を備えもって供養を述ぶ謹んで現前の聖書を集め同音に大三道会を不術集むるところの主君は神ジオンに報いんことを不して願わくは真を捨てず三害六本の死をあれみ末世に再来して一慶御用の春を源氏高婚を封印して文風長く仰がんことをおじお三しいし子孫ぶさもさおじゃお Please put your hands in gasho. Namakiです。開口上法下落法。公明運大運。不要実法無用。不要実法無用。不要実法無用。検問、承知。大神羅にナムカラタンのトラヤヤナムオリヤボリョキチシウラヤ藤里坊やもこ里坊やおこきゃるにきゃやえんさはらはえしゅうたんのとんしゃなうしきびといんぼおりやぶよきち
上極まり怒り通達し弱小にして国を含む。キャラいして世間を感ずればなお夢中の字のごとし。仰ぎ恋願わくは散歩して召喚を垂れたまえ。上来工芸当職傘珍衆を備え、厳然の生死と共にうやうや宿題死んだらにを不術集むるところの功徳は、玉王山総禅寺6月小月供養精霊。週一トーマスくらい大王将。小月追善供養の霊心に愛をてくらいけ先祖代々諸将霊。ベティ・エリザベス・リー・デイ、小月追善供養の霊心に愛をて、理系先祖代々諸将霊。苦行国安在霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて安在家先祖代々諸将霊。末出口霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、出口家先祖代々諸将霊。津浜の霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、浜の家先祖代々諸将霊。国子、堀霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、堀家先祖代々諸将霊。おさむ、犬間霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、犬間家先祖代々諸将霊。まさきくた霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、きくた家先祖代々諸将霊。元あるベリー森下霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、森下家先祖代々諸将霊。勇サム村山霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、村山家先祖代々諸将霊。藤子竹内霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、竹内家先祖代々諸将霊。達也変に上野霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、上野家先祖代々諸将霊。比例湯口霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、湯口家先祖代々諸将霊。リチャード・ジュニア、金霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、金家先祖代々諸将霊。まさえ、ユレイン、佐野霊、小月追善供養の心に愛をて、佐野家先祖代々諸将霊。おのおの、総禅寺男神と各家、先祖類大奨霊にエコす。伏して願わくは、生じの流れに処して理主一人爽快に輝き、ネアンの岸に越して競輪一人駅天によがらかに、あまねく世間を導いて同じく、角路に登らんことを、おじを三四一四子孫無差おさおじゃお Now, I'd like to ask you to place your hands together in Gassho. May this humble merit of reciting the sutras, offering the incense, offering the flowers, sweets, candles, incense, dedicating our chanting, our time, our presence, our thoughts, all be extended through our lives, to our loved ones, our families and friends, to all peoples, to all sentient beings. 願わくはこの功徳をもってあまねく一切に及ぼし、我らと市場と皆共に仏道を上善こと。ナムキエ仏。ナムキエ法。ナムキエソウ。ありがとうございました。Thank you. It's great seeing you. Thank you for joining us. And thank you for Doshin-san, Dave-san, Shushin-san, and let me see. Thank you for all of you for on Zoom. Let me finish recording so you can. Here we go. Oh, you know what? I can't. I think I would record this as well. Anyway, thank you, Charlie, Bill, Amy, Sean from Canada, and I hope as Christy is with us too. Wonder, Masa-san. All right. Let me change this. Apologize for little technical problems we had, which is going to be a part of the service, I think, for a foreseeable future. I know some people simply want to focus here, but now this whole 2-year-long pandemic shifted the whole reality, which is, again, with the Zen mind, we'll simply adapt to the new reality. It's a flexible mind. That's part of Dogen's teaching, so we'll stick to it. Let's see. I wanted to share something. Right. So as I said today, this month in 2018, Reverend Tom Cry passed away. And after his passing, Soto Shu, with the board members at the time, would discuss the future of the temple. And somehow I ended up being a part of that conversation. And all the causes and conditions kind of brought me over here. I'm blessed with all the students. I do often think as I live in this temple, as I continue the mission here, as part of the Soto Shu priest, Soto Zen priest, what Kurai Sensei might have been through as a second. He is born in Japan, but in reality, he was born, raised, pretty much he was raised in the United States, being an American citizen, being American resident, and taking over this weight of the tradition, bearing this weight. It's somehow possible if you are born and raised in Japan. It's not easy, but still it's possible to take this weight if you're born and raised in Japan, because we are born to the social expectation, pressure. But for somebody who was born in, raised in the United States, growing up as an American, to deal with this culture, Japanese culture, Japanese American culture, as somebody who had more global perspective, I do wonder what went through his mind and the endeavor he took. In a sense, we have taken over, we have inherited this spirit from Tom Cry. One prime example is the Fudenshi Temple in Italy, as he advocated taiko drumming, both
as a secular culture, but also in a Buddhist sense, spiritual culture. I went to Taiwanese Buddhist temple yesterday, actually, where I had a conversation with some Taiwanese priests. Japanese and Taiwanese people have a very close tie and connection. And there, I always recognize Japanese priests who had to bend, compromise in the 1800s, marrying somebody, having a child, having a secure life, eating meat. Those are the impact that came through the early 1800s. Lots of compromises was made in Japanese temples when shogunate government was over, when the modernization took over. So for some Asian Sotos and monks, we're not really real deal priests, because if you look at that way, Japanese Buddhism itself is not real deal Buddhism, to say it in a daring way, because of this whole historical shift and changes. It's an adaptation. It was a government interference or the reality of life. And in that sense, in a creative way, we continue to evolve. We continue to adapt to the new setting. And that's precisely today's Soto Zen communities, today's Sozenji communities going through, constantly adapting to the new reality. And this pandemic really posed this reality to us equally. How do we face this new change of reality? How do we move on from there? So I always think, as I remember Christ-Sensei's endeavor, to join our spirit with his. As we work toward the 50th anniversary of Sozenji Buddhist Temple, I'm grateful to Doshin-san, um, Mio-san, Beverly, for work, and Judy, maybe all of you, for working together to collaborate with University of West. Dave, you come through the University of West. In a sense, we are embodying that spirit Christ Sensei planted as a seed to this temple. Coincidentally, well, this is always the case. Every time Sozenji marks a special year, it also overlaps with a special year of the umbrella organization of Soto Shu, the larger Soto Zen community. I want to share something that I was wrapping up the report since lots of things happened from the Hanamatsuri in April. I barely had time to sort out what was happening. So just gonna share with you a little bit. So Buddha's birthday was how happened in April, way back, a little while back. And Hojo-san from Kanzeonji Temple with Doshin-san and Dave have started our weekly practice here. Friends from Angel City Zen Center came and helped us decorate this beautiful baby Buddha shrine. And now we continue on with the Zoom. This hybrid style of service goes on. I'm grateful for their support. I'm just gonna go down. And then only a week later, we had Los Angeles Buddhist Temple Federation, which is a group of Japanese American Buddhist temples of all different denominations. We continue to cherish the spirit of Japanese Americans and Japanese as a cultural heritage, the spirit of our ancestors, the parents and grandparents. Reverend Briones of Nishihonganji, Reverend Ito of Higashihonganji, Colette, and it happened in Higashihonganji Temple. Then right after this Japanese culture event, I had an honor to go to Angel City Zen community. And around that time, Toronto Buddhist Church had a service, which now I could participate on Zoom. Around that time, I've been busy with translating all kind of documents. Japanese Soto Shu priest, American Soto Shu priest, European Soto Shu priest, South American Soto Shu priest, all send documents. So I've been enjoying this translation work there. Then Dave and I went to Long Beach Buddhist Church, which is created by a Wakayama Ken people. They created a fishing village called Terminal Island before the World War II. And they have such a strong community tie. I was welcomed by my first student, Seigaku, who has an Italian ancestry with Dave, and welcomed by Mrs. Masako Kotsubo, who is now 103. She was putting out the chairs in 1951 with the Reverend Kosai Osara, who knows Reverend Shuyu Kurai, and she and other members were present and came over to meet us. Then right after that, I went to New York, Manhattan, New York, where I was welcomed by Koshin Pali Ellison and Chodo Campbell, two big teachers of Zen who are actively promoting chaplaincy. Doshin-san, you went through their programs in New York, right? And they have such a vibrant community. Um, and then there, the community members enter the temple after their siblings, parents go through a difficult time, mental challenges, physical challenges in a hospital, ICU, because they take care of these people. So family join the community such way. Very similar to how Japanese people join the temple when they lose their loved ones. They have this emotional connection. Right after this trip, I also went visit different temples. These are all people from uh, New York Zen centers for contemplative care. There was actually one Japanese lady uh, who was training in New York Zen Center, and she was interested in training more in Toshoji, different temples. So there's a lot of cross-cultural communication happening. Then I went to see this place, Fire Lotus, New York Zen, Zen Center of New York Fire Lotus Temple. Now this exists in what used to be a mortuary, and they've been practicing there as Maizuni Roshi's students, and their students are continuing the practice. They went to a village center. They actually lost the place because the rent in Manhattan is really expensive. So during this pandemic, they had to give up. Now, with a connection with the Tibetan Buddhist community, they found this new location, which I went. So my Dharma talk there was the first occasion when they had in person. They have especially elder community members. So they're being very careful. Now they're starting. And during this trip, I was able to visit 9/11 Memorial Pool, Manhattan, New York, where I was able to offer some prayer to those who were killed. I had a trip from there to Washington, Olympia Zen Center. Olympia Zen Center is one of the few temples in Japan where the monk, a nun, went all the way to Japan. If you're Japanese, you would immediately recognize Ryokan Osho. Ryokan Osho is one of the most famous Soto Zen priests in Japan. So she established, designated this temple as a temple to honor Ryokan Osho. She's almost thinking of retiring. Her name is Edo Carney. Her son, I think in Sweden, I think it's Sweden, yeah, was kind enough to arrange her condominium. So one of the young students of other fellow priest of mine is going as an apprentice. Indication of transition. Drove down from Washington to this place, Great Vow Zen Monastery. Used to be an elementary school. It is an elementary school, and they converted to a Zen monastery. They have people from all over the country, some European, some Canadian, and they have young people. When we hear young people, we envy them. Oh, I wish we had more young people. But Chozen-san, Hogen-san, who are my both Soto Zen priest friends, confessed to me. When young people join the Sangha, very young in their teens and 20s, at one point, they want to have life. So they move on, they leave, or some of them will come back. But that's the nature of training young monastics. So you would never think about this challenge because, in Japanese American community, mostly we're struggling with aging. We're struggling with different kind of challenges. But having young people creates a different kind of challenges. They're very open and honest with me. Yet, such is the nature of this community. They are opening up the door to many young people. And I had a chance to visit Heart of Wisdom Temple in Portland. Bansho-san, Koro-san here are the leaders. Bansho-san is connected to a Japanese association in Portland. He is willing to speak Japanese. The whole time we were having lunch, we're speaking in Japanese. Bansho-san is coming to Zenshuji this November. He's actually coming in July. As you can see what it looks like in a residential area. It was amazing to see there were so many different Zen communities. Then I went on May 7th to the San Francisco Zen Center. Huge Zen communities, epicenter of Zen, I can say. David, the current abbot, welcomed me. I had the chance to talk to them. Now, they had a different kind of dilemma. Because of sheer size of the community, they had to shut down everything. This is one of the few places I had to take a COVID test before entering. They're very strict because once it enters, they're all living in an enclosed space. So they're very careful. But now people want to come back. So they are struggling right now how to balance it out. More people will rush back to the temple, but they can't do that. They have a restaurant they run called Greens. It's a vegan restaurant. They treated us with all the vegan meals. Does that remind me of Sozenji's dressing? Huge chicken. So every temple has such specialty. And of course, in the Western Zen communities, vegan meal is big. And they treated us. It was a feast. Then after visiting all these American Zen communities, I went to Kojingan, Akiba Roshi's temple. We tend to think of him as a director of the umbrella organization. That's one face, but he's also a Roshi of this small Zen community. He has such a nice temple called Kojin An. An means hermitage. He doesn't want to call this a temple. He prefers to keep it small. And he always says, I don't know how I ended up becoming a director of Soto, because that's his nature. He wants to sort of keep it small, but he has such a small, beautiful space. Then from there, I went to Soto Zen Mission of San Francisco on May 8th, also called Sokoji Temple. Masa-san, Stacy, I'm sure you remember Reverend Tatedera from Sokoji Temple. This is located in the midst of Japan town. You can see the original building. Now this is what it looks like. It's a beautiful place, yet it's really difficult. Most people are Japanese moving on to the second Nisei Sansei. Then most people here speak Japanese. Actually, this is the temple I had a job interview first, before I had a job interview in Long Beach. That was the temple I was thinking of going first. But then they are all Japanese speaking. I think I was a little bit more outward looking. So, but Reverend Kurotaki Sensei and me are working together, and he'll be helping us. Shushin-san's Dharma combat ceremony, he'll be here as well. Our 50th anniversary, he'll be here. And Sozenji Temple Sokoji Temple members will be here to help us. Kumi-san, one of the members, speaks English. It's just one person who kept remembering me and Leo, although he was not even born at the time of the Jovi interview, kept asking how he's doing the whole time. Kind of like Kimi-san always asked me. She and her mother. She especially thinks strongly about Sozenji Temple, and she advocates how Sokoji Temple and Sozenji Temple should collaborate more, especially when it comes to Japanese cultural events. Sokoji Temple has a strong reason to keep the cultural tie because of its unique location. It's right in the middle of, like, as I said, in Japantown. So it's an extension of this Japanese community. Then from there, I had a chance to go down to Santa Cruz. On the way, I saw a Kannon-do. This is in the middle of Silicon Valley. So this is one of the places, what's the name of the founder of Apple? Yeah. Steve Jobs, right? Steve Jobs and all of these entrepreneurs kind of went through this gate, Dharma gate, and many of these entrepreneurs were impacted by Zen cultures. That's how we have a nice products. It's an influence. Some people say it's an influence of Zen. I'm not sure if it's really true, but I think it's partially true. Then I drove down to Santa Cruz, Ocean Gate Zen Center, led by Shinshu Roberts, Dijak Kinst. Dijak is a big figure in chaplaincy. So Shuken-san, Doshin-san, Shushin-san all have benefited from the support from Dijak Kinst. They have a little sort of it's not an independent building. Right next to it was a yoga studio, and there's a bicycle store, which I was really happy about. So I was able to share the talk. They have such a lovely community. Then I drove up to Vallejo, Clearwater Zen. Such a beautiful place. This is the building they have. They have a relatively small community, although they were also very honest with me that this is a district where the majority of residents are African Americans, which I immediately noticed. And for schooling and things, it's not always ideal. So some members who stay here move on. So they have a unique challenge. Yet they welcomed me in the morning. Actually, she made a pancake for breakfast. Said, Dharma talk, you can give a Dharma talk for 10 minutes. I like, just come upstairs. I want to treat you with pancakes. That was a main part of the visit. Then Sonoma Zen Mountain Center, Sonoma Mountain Zen Center. This is one of the oldest temples. It was built in 1970s. His father, Jack Sho-san, is a graphic artist, so he did a great writing. And they've been thriving. Soto Zen priest always went to this temple. Sonoma Mountain Zen Monastery has been there for a long time. Recently, county code has changed, or county officials becoming a little more strict about modifying the building, adding new buildings. So while they're maintaining a very core Soto Zen practice, they're dealing with officials from the county about how to maintain the building, how to keep maintain this. They have a unique tie with Tibetan Buddhist teacher because of a Suzuki Roshi. And I finally went to Green Gulch Farm. It's one of the biggest temples, and they are farms. There are also many young people from around this country, the continent, practicing. Then I had a chance. Then I came back to Sozenji Temple, had a Shotsuki service. This is our tradition. Then from there, we had a retreat with Angel City, with all these young people eager to learn precepts, Buddhism, practice. And during this visit, practice at Mount Bodhi, only 45 minutes drive from here, I met the person, I always knew her, from Montreal Zen community, Zen Center, because my son lives in Kingston. So that's how the web is existing. Right there at the top of Mount Bodhi, there's a group of people who are connected with Montreal, Toronto, and all these places. And then I went on to Oregon again to the Buddha Eye Temple, where one of the two secretlies, I'm the one of the two secretlies who works for Sotoshu. The other secretly, Ejo McMullen, has this temple. He didn't build this temple. It was built by his predecessor, but he was welcomed by the community. He's been making sure this community thrives. With him, I went to, again, the Great Vow to help the head priest of the temple again for the upcoming events coming up in 2 weeks. So we're going up to Oregon again to help her. As I said, there's a lot of young monastics there. It's all related to the 100th anniversary of Soto Shu coming up in November. For us to have a 100th anniversary, she needs to have this mountain seed ceremony. So she can be playing a certain role. For us, for And this is the kind of the way Soto Zen temples always work. Then I came back to Los Angeles. First thing I did was the Los Angeles Buddhist Temple Federation's Memorial Day service. I recommend that you come to the memorial service. It happens on May 30th. Evergreen, we have this memorial service. People from all Kenjinkai, Hiroshima Kenjinkai, Okayama Kenjinkai, they will come and honor this place. It was wonderful. Kojima Sensei is very familiar with the history. And we have young priests sent from Japan to the Federation. And throughout the week, last week, we practiced for the 100th anniversary. Among the members are Doshin-san. I'm asking, and Shushin-san will be a part of this team. And Dave, I hope you can be a part of our team too. What Soto Zen Buddhism now is talking about here, we do pay respect to our beginnings, how it started by the Japanese and Japanese Americans, and from there went on to all corners of this continent. During the last 50 to 60 years, Zen culture has evolved. Just like when Buddhism came from China, Japanese people took it and then gradually adapted to fit it in the Japanese culture. Same thing, United States. For Japanese American temples like Sozenji and Zenshuji and Sokoji, we made one promise. As a priest, we do not necessarily share this with the congregation, but we made this promise that I'm here to support the emergence. We support the American teachers to establish their tradition. Whatever that means to Americans, whatever that means to Nisei, Sansei, Yonsei, who are not necessarily familiar with these roots. But here's a promise from the American teachers. I promise to honor and respect your roots, Japanese ancestries, Asian ancestries. And the group of people you're seeing on the screen are the group of people from Sao Paulo, from Hawaii, from Europe, from Oregon, from New York, all coming to one place with this mutual respect, mutual promise that we honor you. We honor this new, whatever's going to happen, and we trust you because you trust our tradition, because you trust our and respect our roots. This is the kind of group of people you're looking at. And this is a group of people you're going to continue to see through the 50th anniversary, through the 100th anniversary, through all the events that are happening at Sozenji Temple in the coming years. 100th anniversary event, we consider this as a threshold to declare independence of American Soto Zen Buddhism. And that's a synonym to equal partnership of Japanese Soto Zen Buddhism, American Soto Zen Buddhism. And I haven't forgotten my Canadian friends. So there was definitely that too. But that's also my personal aspiration and mission. So I just wanted to share on this occasion where we are going through, where we're going to through this threshold of the 100th anniversary. And this is at least a framework. This is at least a mutual promise all these Zen teachers have made among us. And this is what's going to be happening in November at Zenshuji Temple. And that's a primal difference from the 80th anniversary Jukai. This Jukai will have Japanese Americans. We have all these non-Japanese Americans from all different corners, from Zen communities. And we will continue to see more diverse community. And Sozenji Temple will also like to honor this intention of Soto Zen Buddhism in North America as one of the member temple. Sozenji Temple has a very unique place and function to play in this sense. With a flexible mind, with our original roots, and the size of this temple allows us to move more flexibly, probably compared to Zenshuji Temple, maybe even Sokoji. So here I'm asking you to share this aspiration Soto Zen Buddhism has been sharing, or continue to share through the 100th anniversary, without being attached to your pride, being attached to your complex. Because Japanese Americans do have gone through difficult experience, just like any ethnic communities have gone through difficult experience. And it's not easy to say. And that was part of the messages I was sharing through this tour. Friendship, mutual trust, it's not a fairy tale. It has to come with digging deeper into our own pains and sufferings, allowing our sufferings to be shared, then be open. So it takes some determination. And that's, as a secretary of Soto Shu, I think as an abbot of this temple, I will continue to advocate. I will continue to ask all people who will be participating in the 100th anniversary. And my determination, in a sense, is going to be truly tested, in a sense, as well. So, that said, I said this because I feel Reverend Tom Kurai also embodied this aspect of the Soto Zen's value, and he upheld it through his life. So I'm hoping that this intention, the goal of Soto Zen Buddhism as a large community, Mahasangha, and Sozenji Temple, and the legacy of Tom Kurai, and our own individual intention will merge in somehow. And we hope we can continue to have more honest, open discussions on this endeavor. All right, thank you. That's it from me. Anybody wants to? Okay. Right. All right, thank you very much. And please put your hands in Gasho. Shushin-san, are you there? Okay. All right. Oh, great. Is there anything you want to say? Yes. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. All right, please put your hands in Gasho. Namukie butsu. Namukie ho. Namukie so. Hai, arigatou gozaimashita. And thank you. And for those of you who are on Zoom, I'm going to stop recording this session.